The North Atlantic Treaty Organization, a sentinel of democracy, a guarantor of freedom. Founded in the aftermath of World War II, NATO stands as a bulwark against tyranny. It represents a solemn vow among nations: an attack on one is an attack on all. For decades, this principle has underpinned global security. From the icy plains of Europe to the shores of the Atlantic, NATO's presence is felt. It serves as a deterrent against aggression, a force for stability in an uncertain world. But the world is changing. New challenges emerge. Old adversaries reappear. In the face of these evolving threats, NATO's relevance is being tested like never before. Putin's relationship with NATO has long been fraught with tension. He has consistently accused the alliance of encroaching on Russia's borders. He views NATO expansion as a direct threat to Russian security. His rhetoric has grown increasingly hostile in recent years. The annexation of Crimea in 2014 marked a turning point. Putin's brazen disregard for international law sent shockwaves through the West. It was a clear signal of his willingness to use force to achieve his objectives. NATO responded with sanctions and condemnation. But the damage was done. Since then, Putin has continued to test the limits of Western resolve. He has engaged in military exercises near NATO borders. He has supported separatist movements in eastern Ukraine. His actions have been met with a mixture of apprehension and condemnation. Now, Putin has unveiled a new strategy. A plan so audacious, so brazen that it has stunned the world. A plan that threatens to upend the global order. A plan that could lead to war. Details remain shrouded in secrecy. Whispered rumors and leaked intelligence paint a chilling picture. Putin's new plan is a direct challenge to NATO's core principles. It is a calculated gamble that could have catastrophic consequences. At the heart of this strategy is a bold proposition: the establishment of a new security architecture in Europe, one that excludes NATO and places Russia firmly in control. Putin has called for the withdrawal of NATO troops from Eastern Europe. He has demanded guarantees that Ukraine will never join the alliance. These demands have been met with outrage and disbelief by Western leaders. They are seen as non-starters, unacceptable infringements on the sovereignty of independent nations. Yet, Putin seems undeterred. He has shown a willingness to escalate tensions to achieve his goals. The world holds its breath. Is Putin bluffing? Or is he prepared to risk everything on this audacious gamble? The answer to this question will determine the fate of nations. Analysts and experts are working feverishly to decipher the Kremlin's true intentions. What is the endgame? Is this a desperate attempt to regain lost influence? Or is it a calculated move to redraw the map of Europe? Some believe that Putin is seeking to exploit divisions within NATO. He sees an opportunity to weaken the alliance from within. By sowing discord and undermining Western resolve, Putin hopes to achieve his objectives without resorting to military force. Others fear that Putin is preparing for the unthinkable: a direct military confrontation with NATO. They point to the recent buildup of Russian forces near Ukraine as evidence of his aggressive intentions. The Kremlin's rhetoric has also become increasingly bellicose, raising fears of a miscalculation that could spiral out of control. The world watches and waits, caught in a dangerous game of brinkmanship. The stakes are higher than ever before. The consequences of miscalculation, too terrible to contemplate. Section 5. A New Iron Curtain. The potential impacts of Putin's provocation. The potential impacts of Putin's actions are far-reaching and deeply unsettling. They threaten to unravel the post-Cold War order and plunge Europe into a new era of instability. The very foundations of international security are being shaken. One immediate concern is the risk of a wider war in Europe, a conflict that could easily draw in NATO and Russia, with potentially catastrophic consequences. The deployment of Russian troops near Ukraine has raised fears of a repeat of the 2014 annexation of Crimea. Beyond the immediate military threat, Putin's actions have broader geopolitical implications. His challenge to NATO undermines the principle of collective security that has underpinned European stability for decades. It also risks emboldening other authoritarian leaders who seek to challenge the international order. The world is facing a defining moment. The choices made in the coming days and weeks will have profound consequences for generations to come. The stakes could not be higher. Section 6. From Washington to Warsaw. Global reactions to Putin's power play. The international community has responded to Putin's gambit with a mixture of alarm and condemnation. Western leaders have denounced his actions as reckless and irresponsible. They have vowed to stand united in the face of Russian aggression. The United States has taken a leading role in rallying international support against Russia. President Biden has imposed a series of sanctions targeting key sectors of the Russian economy. He has also authorized the deployment of additional troops to Eastern Europe to reassure NATO allies. European nations have also taken steps to bolster their defenses. NATO has increased its military presence in the region, and several member states have announced plans to increase their defense spending. The European Union has also imposed sanctions on Russia, though there is some disagreement among member states about how far to go. Despite the show of unity, there are concerns about divisions within the Western alliance. Some European countries are more reluctant than others to confront Russia directly, fearing economic retaliation or even military escalation. Putin is no doubt hoping to exploit these divisions to his advantage. Section 7. The Dragon in the Shadows, China's Calculated Silence. As the West grapples with the crisis in Ukraine, all eyes are on China. Beijing's response to Putin's actions has been notably muted. China has refrained from condemning the Russian military buildup, but it has also stopped short of endorsing Putin's actions. This calculated ambiguity reflects China's complex relationship with both Russia and the West. On the one hand, China and Russia have forged increasingly close ties in recent years, driven by shared economic interests and a common desire to challenge U.S. hegemony. On the other hand, China is wary of becoming too closely aligned with Russia, particularly in a conflict that could destabilize the global economy. China is likely watching the situation in Ukraine closely, assessing the implications for its own strategic interests. Beijing may see an opportunity to advance its own geopolitical goals, such as weakening NATO or driving a wedge between the United States and its European allies. However, China is also aware of the risks involved, and it is likely to tread carefully for now. Section 8. A World on Edge, Navigating the Precipice of Conflict. The world is at a crossroads. The crisis in Ukraine has brought the United States and Russia closer to the brink of conflict than at any time since the Cold War. The specter of nuclear war, once unthinkable, now casts a long shadow over global affairs. The situation is incredibly volatile and unpredictable. Miscalculation or misjudgment on either side could have devastating consequences. The stakes are incredibly high, not just for the countries directly involved but for the entire world. In this tense environment, cool heads and clear thinking are essential. Diplomacy must be given every chance to succeed. The international community must work together to find a peaceful resolution to the crisis. The alternative is too terrible to contemplate. A war between NATO and Russia would be a catastrophe for all involved. It is a scenario that must be avoided at all costs. Section 9. The Price of Defiance, Economic Fallout from the Brinkmanship. The standoff between Russia and the West is already having a significant impact on the global economy. Sanctions imposed by the United States and its allies are beginning to bite, while Russia has responded with counter-sanctions of its own. The price of oil and gas has soared as markets react to the uncertainty. Russia is a major energy producer, and any disruption to its exports would have a ripple effect across the global economy. Europe is particularly vulnerable as it relies heavily on Russian gas imports. The crisis is also exacerbating existing inflationary pressures. Supply chains are already strained due to the COVID-19 pandemic, and the conflict in Ukraine is adding to the pressure. This is leading to higher prices for consumers, particularly for essential goods and services. The economic fallout from the crisis is likely to be felt far beyond Russia and Ukraine. The longer the standoff continues, the greater the damage to the global economy. This is yet another reason why a peaceful resolution to the crisis is so important. Section 10. The Future of Global Security. Can diplomacy prevail? As tensions between Russia and the West reach a fever pitch, the world anxiously awaits answers. Can diplomacy overcome this seemingly insurmountable chasm? Can dialogue bridge the divide and avert a catastrophic conflict? The path forward is fraught with obstacles. Mistrust runs deep and the shadow of past grievances hangs heavy. Yet history teaches us that even in the darkest of times, diplomacy can offer a glimmer of hope. For diplomacy to succeed, both sides must be willing to engage in good faith. There must be a genuine desire to find common ground, to address each other's concerns, and to seek compromise. The alternative is unthinkable. the world holds its breath, clinging to the hope that reason will prevail. The fate of nations, indeed the fate of humanity, may very well hinge on the delicate dance of diplomacy in the days and weeks to come. Section 11. A world reordered. Living with the consequences of Putin's gamble. Regardless of the outcome of this immediate crisis, one thing is certain: the world has been irrevocably changed. Putin's actions have shattered the illusion of stability that characterized the post-Cold War era. We are entering a new and uncertain chapter in international relations. The old rules no longer apply, and the contours of the new order are still taking shape. What is clear is that the world is becoming increasingly multipolar, with power shifting away from the West and towards other centers of influence, such as China and Russia. In this new world, competition between great powers is likely to intensify. The risk of conflict, both conventional and unconventional, will remain high. The international community will need to find new ways to manage these challenges and prevent them from spiraling out of control. The stakes are higher than ever before. The decisions made in the coming months and years will determine the course of the 21st century. The world is watching, waiting, and hoping for the best, but bracing for the worst.